Hey everybody, this is Nick Mayhew, three-time gold medalist and three-time world record holder, and you're listening to Power 98.5.
We don't play the social game. We are social. Power 98.5. You're listening to Power 98.5, powered by United Angels Dream, your number one resource for public relations, entertainment, and multimedia. Contact them today at unitedangelsdream.com.
Hi, this is Dan Aykroyd. He's progressive. He's beautiful. He's thoughtful. He's intelligent. He's powerful. He's positive. He is Stephen Cuoco on Power 98.5 Satellite Radio.
Empowering listeners from the US to the UK. Live on air with Stephen Cuoco.
Dig your vinyl, man. My budget doesn't. Calling time on collecting. State Farm has options.
The moment when we want to go ahead and play an intro, a nice little commercial wants to pop up. That is unacceptable. We have David Majzlin today, and we're going to open up with one of my favorite compositions by him, and it is Miracle Boy. Boy, that just really puts you in the best mood possible. We've got today, live on air with Stephen Cuoco on Power 98.5 Satellite Radio. We are doing something different, a different opening, a really open, very enveloped with just peace and comfort. We've got David Majzlin. He's an Emmy-nominated composer whose credits include numerous critically acclaimed films, such as The Loving Story, Youth Knows No Pain, and Sins of My Father for HBO, Herb and Dorothy, Being Real, and Shenandoah, directed by Pulitzer Prize-winning photographer David Turnley. David, welcome to Live on Air with Stephen Cuoco on Power 98.5. This is the most calmest intro I think I've ever had.
That's awesome. I love that.
Your credentials go beyond, I believe, what most people of your status, of your age, because you are still extremely young, and don't deny it. Of what you're doing out here in the world, it's extraordinary.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's a very complex world.
Take us back. Where did it originally begin for you? At what age? Where were you at in your life?
Well, my publishing company is called Toy Hammer Music because when I was 2 years old, I was playing the piano with a toy hammer. My parents didn't realize this. They were in the other room. And when they came back and saw the chips of ivory keys on the floor, I think they realized that there was some connection to music somehow. The very, very, very earliest memory I have of music being written down, from what I can remember, would have been when I first saw the movie Rocky and Bill Conti's main theme from that with the trumpets. I remember writing that down. Right? Writing that down and making a little thing of sheet music, like making a picture of Sylvester Stallone and pictures of Mr. T and pictures of Apollo, and I made my own little sheet music. I don't even remember how old I was. I have that memory. Unfortunately, I don't have the sheet music itself. But that's where I got introduced to music at a really young age. A lot of artists in my family come from a line of a lot of different performers and people who are in the arts, heavily in the arts, growing up in New York. Yeah, and so I've always been in music, always played in a lot of bands, a lot of different genres, a lot of different people. And today I do a lot of different things. So I've had a very eclectic background.
You've been nominated for a Jackson Wild Media Award for your work with the 4-hour orchestral score to EPIC YELLOWSTONE for the Smithsonian Channel. Mm-hmm. Tell us more about that, because I really like the sound of that.
That was one of my favorite and exhausting projects. It's a lot of music to create music for these nature series. And it was the kind of thing that for me personally, I always do what directors would like to do. I like to, we as composers, our job is to see the film's vision as told by the director, and whatever the director wants to do in order to tell this story, the music has to further that agenda. I like personally when there's less music. I like as little music as possible so that it has maximum impact. But in the nature world, in the nature filmmaking world, a lot of times the style is to keep someone engrossed through the whole thing. So there's a lot more music. And when you look at these gorgeous, gorgeous pictures that Grizzly Creek Films out of Montana shot of Yellowstone National Park, it is so inspiring to see these drone shots and these gorgeous animals running around in nature. It's just very inspiring. And all that music really had to be in there, or it felt empty. So that was a lot of music. It was really wall-to-wall music, and it took me about 7 months to write. But what a great experience. In fact, it's been seen by millions and millions of people now. One of the greatest things about nature films is that they translate into every language. There's no politics in nature. There's no issue in nature. It is every culture, every language understands exactly what they're looking at. And I think that's part of the success. It's a beautiful series. It's also on other networks as well. You can stream it.
What are the expectations to be at the sophisticated level that you're at, to be a music producer, an educator, and a writer? What would you say to your younger self, if anything, David? Would you have any words of wisdom or something to say, you know what, I would have done this in order to make it a lot more effortless and less stressful? Or do you embrace everything that you've acquired and accomplished in a manner of where it has gone for you in your life? Would you change a thing?
I think if I was giving advice to myself or to anyone else, it really depends on what you want to do. Playing in lots and lots of different bands was invaluable because you learn how to work with other people. You learn about different genres. I played bass in a lot of bands, and what's great about being a bass player is you're always a fly on the wall. So I would play with bands and they would do these showcases, or they might, perform for a label or whatever. Nobody cares about the bass player. We're just in the background, keeping it down with the drummer. And so I was a fly on the wall for a lot of meetings and things that would go on, and that was an incredible experience. But the technology moves faster than anything. And that's the big game changer here, is that now you have unlimited outlets and unlimited opportunity, which is a blessing and a curse. I think there's 60,000 songs a day uploaded to Spotify. A lot of those are probably not written by people. A lot of those may be artificial intelligence creating compositions and uploading them. That gets very complicated over time. But the experiences that I had right after school, working in a video game company, learned a lot about tech at this video game company. Tech, music, these are things that go hand in hand with being a music producer today. Back in the day, my inspirations are people like George Martin, who produced the Beatles, obviously. He's someone who's writing it down with a pencil. It's a different train of thought when you're writing with a pencil versus writing with a computer. It's a different approach. My other favorite producer is Rick Rubin. Again, the reason why I love someone like Rick Rubin is because of the eclectic influences culturally, musically. He just really, really put his own personal loves into the bands that he's producing, into the projects that he's producing. And that's something that's really important to me. If I could do certain things over again, it depends. I've had opportunities to work when I was younger, to work with much, much bigger people, much larger producers and composers. And it's a tricky road. When you are an assistant to someone, you are an assistant in order to be able to eventually break out. And it's a different, it's a whole different line versus being in the world of independent film or doing music on your own as an independent music producer versus working for a studio and all these kinds of things. They all have their advantages and disadvantages. When you work with assistants and apprentices and mentors, you're getting firsthand knowledge about how they work. So if I were to give advice to young people as far as whatever they want to do overall, I would say get with the people who are doing what you love and just get in there. Jump in with both hands. You might not get paid anything at first. You might have to intern. You might have to do whatever. Get in there, because that's the fastest way to learn, is through an apprenticeship. That's what I would say.
You are an extraordinary father. I absolutely enjoy how I would not think that someone like yourself would have such an open, very youthful, and I mean youthful in a way to where your Instagram shows a different side, another side of who you really are. And it's fun, it's playful, it's light, it's airy. It's beautiful to see, you as a father, of how you really are balanced in the energy with your daughter and how it shows online. I don't see that often with someone like such as yourself. Within your industry or within a music industry, there's normally an edge. There's something different. Nothing wrong with that. With you, it's just very elegant. It's very serene. It's just very different that I don't quite often see every day online, because you come across in a balance of hard and soft, being very strong. I see you as a very strong, a man that's very diplomatic, very aware, very visual, very auditory. You care to pay attention. And the balance is beautiful.
Wow. That's amazing. I really, really, really appreciate that. The reason why my Instagram is personal right now is just because it's personal. I don't find anything interesting about just uploading music like a library. I don't think there's anything that's interesting about just incessantly uploading things all the time. I like to curate what I think is interesting or fun. And so I'm probably the worst social media person, because I'm not about the moment and uploading it in the moment. I don't care about that. I don't care about the instant reactions or the likes or anything like that. I just share, hey, this is something fun. This is something about me. This is kind of, another part of me. And if you want to hear music, you can hear music anywhere you want. You can hear it on my website. You can hear it, in the clips, whatever. But what I find is, especially in the music business, everybody wants to pigeonhole you into something, right? Some kind of genre to make it easier to market. At the end of the day, you could say, this is rap, this is R&B, this is hip hop, this is metal, this is whatever. when you work in film, you're required to know everything because every story is different. There's not a style. When people, it's funny, all my friends who are in film composition, we all have the same jokes. It's, people come and they say, oh, you're in film, you're a film composer. What kind of music do you write? And that's like saying, well, what kind of films do you make? No filmmaker and no composer wants to do the same project over and over. So every film has been eclectic and different and really interesting, with great directors and really good music supervisors and really, really good, music editors. They're just all passionate about the story. And so the music's always changing. One of the things I find that's really interesting and ironic is that when people start out doing things, you try to do as much as you can, right? You get very eclectic, you get whatever work you can, you get out there. But once you break with some style or something that someone knows you for, then they say, oh, do that again. We want that again, or we want that again. It's kind of like my friends who are in A&R, for every Adele that is signed, there's a lot of other bands that can be signed because of the success of that artist, and they try to get something that's unique and all this stuff. Whenever I'm working on films, I try to only refer to the film and not the music, because there's so many different genres of music and there's so many different emotional responses that can be elicited, and they're all unique. We try to just talk about the story itself. So the genre does not matter. The style doesn't matter. There is no style for me personally in film music, just like I don't believe there's music for documentaries. That doesn't make sense to me, because there's music for film. There's documentary film and there's narrative films, but music is something that a lot of directors are scared of, because they often don't speak the language. And so we refer to shortcuts like, well, is it rock, or is it hip hop, or is it this? And so I think that overall it is the kind of thing where I'm just trying to share parts of me, and not necessarily here's my music catalog. Music supervisors, people I work with, they can access my catalog of music, but that, to me, I don't want my page to look like that. I just want to share what I think is kind of fun. And I'm also really slow with the social media. It takes me a while. It takes me a bit to get on it, but when I put stuff up, people are always laughing. I had one person say, why don't you post more? And I said, I don't have time. I don't know. I don't have time. I got to get on it. Thank you for those kind words.
You're welcome, David. And once again, you're doing very well. It doesn't look like you're having a problem. So we may not know
one day at a time.
One day at a time. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but you do make it look effortless. With that, I want to get this rundown in, because I truly feel this is deserving. So, and I am saying your last name correctly. It's Majzlin.
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. Because I know you had it was easy for me, but I know on Instagram you had to, spell it out of how to pronunciate it. I'm actually surprised that it would be difficult, but then again, my name can sometimes get chopped up as well.
Mm-hmm.
So David Majzlin has produced and created original music for a myriad of television shows and promos, including Mozart in the Jungle, Parenthood, Person of Interest, Animal Planet, Ugly Betty, CSI, The Ghost Whisperer, Grey's Anatomy, the Tony Awards, CNN, CNBC, A&E, Desperate Housewives, which I absolutely love knowing that, and 60 Minutes. What has been the most memorable of what I just shared, of that you had put together, that you were a part of, and that's still part of you?
Wow, there's so many things that I just love. I mean, I don't think there's ever been any project I don't love, and I'm knocking on wood with that, because a lot of us have to work on things we don't like. I can't create good stuff if I don't like the project. There was only, I don't even know, maybe 3 or 4 projects that I was like, wow, we are gelling like right on. We are in sync with what we're doing. And they've all been great experiences. They're all different levels. Mozart in the Jungle was fun just because of the content. It's about classical musicians growing up in New York. And ironically, I had just moved to LA after that. So I wasn't in New York, but I had spent most of my life in New York. And that was really fun because the creators of that show really cared. They really cared about music because it's about music. And they wanted to make sure that the details were right. All of the things on that show are amazing. Some of the things I did for that show were field producing, which is really fun. It's something I really love doing. I don't get to do it a lot. It depends on, it's a very specific thing, but where they'll say, okay, we want you to work with creating recordings that would sound like a bad audition. Like a violinist is going to audition for something and it has to be a bad audition. Like they don't get the gig. So what's a bad audition? I mean, really, unless you're a violinist, you don't really know what a bad audition is because, these are minutia. These are small details that we know as musicians or as composers and classical musicians know as performers that arise over many, 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 many years of playing and practicing. And so we decided to do very subtle things in a bad audition that probably only violinists are going to understand. And I thought that was great because I've actually had I've had musicians email me and say, did you do the pieces for this audition thing? And I said, yeah. And they said, that was good. Like no one would play Mozart like that. It's the wrong technique. You know what I mean? And that was cool. That made me really, really happy. But to be honest, my favorite, two of my favorite projects, one would be a very, very weird, very avant-garde film that was one of the first projects I had done. I think it was 2004 or 5, I don't remember, called Asylum Seekers. I don't even know where you can find the film, to be honest, but this is a director named Rania Ajami who's way ahead of her time. She's always been ahead of her time. She actually has a show now on Off-Broadway called Pip's Island, which is a show that's playing in Manhattan for kids. And that was an incredible, incredible film because that introduced me to different people in the business that I continue to have a relationship with today. And it was also allowed me to have free reign. They were like, do what you do. And I did what I did, and it all lined up with what the director wanted, and it was really great. But the other favorite project I would say is one that was not in your list, which was working with Renée Fleming on the film Bel Canto, which is directed by Paul Weitz. And Paul was one of the creators of Mozart in the Jungle, fabulous director, American Pie, and he just did Fatherhood with Kevin Hart. And he's such a good director. I mean, he's like a director's director. He cares. He really cares about the story. He really cares about the words. And then when it came to music, we had this opportunity to work with Renée Fleming, one of the most preeminent sopranos. And it was such a cool experience, just even seeing how she wanted to be recorded. She brings in her own people for that. And it was just such a cool experience. I mean, really the highest level of respect for how to record a vocalist and how to really record an opera singer specifically. That I would say is one of my favorite experiences for sure. When you get to work with top talent, it makes it so easy.
And that's with Julianne Moore, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, I've got that information up right now, Bel Canto. This is your content, just though, even, the classical tracks, they're just timeless. And we're going to do another live. I would like to play main theme from EPIC Yellowstone that my team is putting together for us to get ready to play. Even to look into the soundtracks and the information that, when we think of what you just shared, the Bel Canto, your music, there's something that I found slightly different, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't mind. There's something different from going to your SoundCloud and listening to your music there, and then going into other scores and compositions, I feel that there is not just one layer or level of yourself. And it's almost as though, especially when I was, going through your SoundCloud, catalog here, I just felt something different than going, into like more of the film. It's something just very different. I'm processing right now. I don't know if I'm making sense to you at all of what I'm saying. It's very complimenting, but your SoundCloud catalog tracks, I feel that I'm feeling David Majzlin. Does that make sense? It's almost like when I think of, what do we have here? Going in and what I'm going to be playing. Do you find that you're bringing more of your soul and your heart, David, into certain projects where you feel that it's a different type of ownership or embodiment? Does it change at all?
That all depends on the project. When I work on films, when I work on music that's for other people, so films and documentaries and narrative films, documentaries, shorts, theater, opera, whatever it is, that's music for someone else, for their project. I always put my heart and soul into everything. I mean, just as an artist, you want to always, you're always doing that. And what feels good, and what doesn't feel good, doesn't feel good. The tricky part is that when you work for someone else, they have a vision too, and they also have a different emotional reaction to music than anyone would. Everyone, in fact, it's interesting that I think you mentioned the opening piece with Miracle Boy, that you felt it was really calming and beautiful. And it is a calming and beautiful piece. The scene that's from is about a man who is remembering, he is remembering the death of his parents. He's remembering being abandoned as a child, and he works on the highway, like dealing with tow trucking and fixing, like a mechanic role, where he's emergency highway repair, where he comes out to rescue people when their cars are stuck and stuff. And he has to go to the scene of an accident where there's a woman who, looks like it could be his mom. And it's just a very emotional, beautiful scene. Now, when you watch it with the film, it's very emotional. It's, a little bit of a tearjerker, but it's so interesting when you hear it out of context. You feel it's calm and beautiful, Mm-hmm. Now, what I love about your interpretation of it is that if I think of it as calm and beautiful in the context of the film, then it is calm and beautiful because this is a mother-like figure that he's now connecting with, who just got into an accident. And so that can come out of the film when you're watching it. The film itself, or whatever the other medium it is, has to agree with the medium of music. It's interesting. Music can exist on its own, and film can exist on its own. With the exception of only 2 films I've seen that had no editing in it. They were shot in one, an hour and a half long film shot in one shot. Film has to have editing. I mean, otherwise it's a series of photographs. And so I think that with all of these projects, you put your heart and soul in it, but you have to remember that you're of service to someone else. You are secondary. The director's vision is first, always, always, always. And your job is to shepherd them through whatever is going to help their film. When I work on films, I like to say that, and it's funny, I always say this in first meetings with directors, and sometimes they're like, really? I say, I want as little music as possible. If there's no music, maybe that's what you need. Because for me, when you put music in, it has to have some purpose. It has to do what the film is not doing by itself. If the film is, if a scene is boring and you say, oh, it's boring, we need music, cut the scene. It's baggage, That's just my opinion. But when it comes to actually writing for other people, you have to take that into account. When it comes to writing my own stuff, that's a little different. And that's something I've only really spent gosh, the last couple of years really working on, because I'm always writing for other people. So now I'm producing artists and I'm doing a lot of other things that are putting my own stamp that doesn't need to be under another project. It's just things that I like to do. And I just try to do all of that. I will say it's very difficult to represent who one is as a composer via the internet unless you just have a huge assortment of things, that's what I do. I put up things that I like. So I try to keep it eclectic, but the projects have all been eclectic. So that's been the result of really great collaborations with great directors.
Would you like to share with us, David, and thank you for that you nailed it with explaining and understanding what I was seeing inside my head and what I was feeling. Main theme from EPIC Yellowstone. Before we play this track, would you like to share anything about it?
Well, it's EPIC Yellowstone. It's working on a project that's called EPIC Yellowstone that needs 4 hours of music needs to be epic. I think that might have been the direction. Like, we need it to be epic. It was just a lovely film with really wonderful down-to-earth people and just gorgeous technology. The technology was used to create gorgeous imagery. So I will say one thing that's interesting, because you're talking about putting your heart and soul into things. The thing that's tricky with film composition in particular, but with technology, is that nowadays the tech is getting so good that everyone's expecting everything to sound giant with no 80 or 90 or 100 piece orchestra. This has been going on for a while now, and it's accelerating because the computers are getting faster, the samples are getting better. And it's the kind of thing where what I do really try to do as much as possible is to use real people as much as humanly possible, no pun intended, because that's the essence. That's what is going to distinguish you from everyone else. Everyone has the same samples. They all have the same sample libraries. They all have the same beats. They all have the same sounds. Using real people, to me, is what I fight for on every project. I try to convince people that really you want it to be live. And for this project in particular, this was a very, it was a long project. It was a big sound. We didn't have time to do a full orchestra, 100-piece orchestra or anything like that. It was just impossible. So one of the things that is always a tricky aspect of what we do is that you want what's in your head to come out onto the, out of the speakers. Whatever is playing in your mind, you want people to hear that. And oftentimes there are a lot of shortcuts that we have to take because of budgets, because of time constraints. And so this project in particular, I was happy with because it just allowed me to still stay in that big orchestral realm, but not go too crazy with things where, you wind up basically just writing everything to be huge, big drums, big orchestra, big bombat. This opening sequence though was very dramatic because that was the opening of the series, and so I have a wonderful cellist on there playing from New York City, one of my favorite cellists, Sophie Shao, and she's just lovely. And yeah, let's take a listen.
Perfect. Thank you. I encourage everyone to head on over to David Majzlin's SoundCloud account. Check out and listen to every single piece that David has within his catalog that's online. I can listen to this all day, and why I say that seriously is I meditate quite often, David. I see that you enjoy doing yoga as well. That's another something
I
else.
do yoga, and I got really into the Wim Hof. Have you
Yes.
been into Wim Hof? Oh, I love that guy. I love him. In fact, somebody introduced me to Wim Hof the day when we first went into lockdown, really, in the pandemic in 2020. In March, and it was right after my daughter's birthday, and she told me, "Oh, you should check out Wim Hof. Wim Hof, the cold showers, cold, ice baths, all that." And I have not missed a single day. Every single day, I've done Wim Hof for now 2 years, and then take a really, really, really cold shower. And it's an amazing thing. It's great. It's a great thing. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because I do enjoy his breathing techniques. Now, unlike you, I don't do it every day. However, I know when I need his insight, and I go to it.
Yeah, he's great. He's great.
Within the industry, entertainment or otherwise, when we think about films, television, David, advertising, here's my perception, and I would like to find out where you stand in this. I believe that professionals such as yourself, music artists, in general, I believe should be taken a lot more seriously, respected, and I mean when it comes to contracts, when it comes to not hijacking and taking over the masters, by treating professionals such as yourself more than just a real estate commodity, and to really pay the true value. Because without music, without, once again, professional people like yourself, where would advertisements be? Films, television, all of that. Do you believe that in my perception of what I see of what happens and is still happening in the music industry, of where I counsel music artists and have the opportunity to understand more about what a musician goes through, or a writer or a composer goes through, or producer, do you believe it has gotten better, or does there still need to be more improvement to the management, to the representation, to the compensation, of financial compensation, and the resistance of companies trying to hijack and take over your masters? Are we heading in a better direction to where you're being more respected, taken more seriously, and treated with more respect, of which I feel needs to happen?
That's a very big question with a lot of facets. The short answer is yes, I think it's getting better. The reason why I say yes is because people are getting educated. The reason why anyone gets taken advantage of is simply because they're uneducated. That is the bottom line. We can make the labels the enemy. We can make whoever we want the enemy. But at the end of the day, if you go into a situation where you're signing something and you don't understand what you are signing, you are giving up a lot. Now, I understand both sides of this argument. From the artist side, the artist wants to be paid appropriately for their art. On the label side, the label would like to recoup. I mean, it's one thing to put out music. It's another thing for anyone to hear it at all in the first place. It requires enormous marketing, enormous teams. You know this as a publicist. It's amazing. I keep seeing people put, here's an idea I have for a song, and they put it on Instagram. What do you think? And in my mind, I'm like, what I think is someone's going to steal that in 2 seconds, because you're not copywriting it. Putting it on Instagram doesn't do anything. Technically you're you're putting something in a tangible form, but you're telling everyone that this is a work in progress. So someone can just take that and develop it into a song, copyright it, and you cannot do anything about that. These are things that I think that the technology is a blessing and a curse in that way. People all want to share, but you don't want to treat the world as your therapist, where you're just constantly putting stuff up all the time. You have to respect yourself first. Write the song and put it out. Don't keep asking people what they think, because you don't need everybody's validation for that kind of thing. The reason why I think things are getting better, though, has to do with education. And I keep reading all these, stories about artists buying back their masters. I think that's wonderful. I think that's really, really wonderful. I think that it's great if the label gives it up for the amount that's negotiated. But we also have to remember that these artists didn't just become big because the music was good. That's such a myth. There are huge PR campaigns, huge amounts of work go into making something get out there. And that's something that's very, very important. So being educated about how is music released, what are the actual numbers? I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen people, they're like, hey, I have 100,000, streams. I'm like, that's not any money. Like, streams don't equate. It's two different. They're two totally different animals. Streams, downloads, concert sales, they're all different sources of revenue. You cannot go by those numbers. You can't go by the ratings. You can't go by the followers. You can't go by, anything other than the fact that artists that have the money have the ability to put the music out in a much larger capacity than independent artists. But the technology does allow independent artists to share the same platform. So they can have Taylor Swift on Spotify and, Miss Songwriter on Spotify on the same platform. But Taylor Swift has much, 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 much more power to do whatever she wants with her music, because she has that kind of financial backing to do that. So she can buy back her masters, or other artists can buy back their masters. I just don't like when people, I just don't like the general assumption that everyone's corrupt, everyone's out to get everybody. Everybody wants to make money. That's the bottom line. You make a film. I mean, it's a miracle to me that films get made at all. And you really have no idea how hard it is to make a film until you work with a filmmaker. These people are warriors. I mean, they're crazy. They go against all odds to get their project out there. And imagine, you come up with some idea for a script, and you're like, oh, this is cool. Maybe it'll get into a workshop. Maybe from that workshop it'll get developed. Maybe from that development it'll get the interest of a producer. Maybe the producer will get it to a studio. Maybe the studio will greenlight it. Maybe the greenlight will be able to get it into I mean, there's so many places where you can fail, that when the film is out, or when a piece of music is out, or when a performer is out performing and somebody criticizes it and is just like, that sucks. It's like, you have no idea how much love and heart and sweat and money went into getting that thing out there. So there are two sides to this all the time. It's not just labels versus masters, independents versus studios. There are systems of distribution that are being changed as we speak, and that I think are good and are important. But at the end of the day, the artist needs to realize that it takes money to make money. And as long as you're educated, and as long as you have a lawyer when you go into the deal, things should work out for you. And that's really, I think, and the reason I say it's getting better because of the education is because you can go online now and look up anything. I mean, it's unbelievable. Like you can find anything on any subject. How do split sheets work? Look it up. How does publishing work? Look it up. I mean, kids today, they can get any piece of information they want from the internet And as long as they double, triple, and quadruple check their references so that they know it's right, I see a lot of misinformation out there. But if they can, do the work, they will get educated and they'll get into the right situation from the beginning instead of signing a crappy deal and then many decades later having to try to sue or get back some owed royalties and things like that. But I do think it's all getting better for sure. That's the long-winded answer.
I appreciate that, David. On my end, from a PR perspective and experience that I've been having, is a lot of more of the not understanding, not educated, not doing extensive research, undervaluing, that's the right way to put it, the person's intent and positioning within their own life and career. And I've said to some, most recently, music artists, that it can be challenging, and you nailed it, David, when the finances are not there and when the proper management or representation is not there to guide you. It's very unfortunate that there are people out there that are really struggling. You are right. There, in the last 2 years, including with what this pandemic has offered, is people have really been diving into, let me find out, let me learn, let me get a better grasp onto understanding what I'm doing before I do it, while I do it, before I publish it, whatever it may be. I would like more often professionals like yourself to be making tons of money, whether you're well known, well established or not. The factor of it is, like you said, it's going to be a very small percentage of, when you reference Taylor Swift, that will be close or up at that level, including yourself. It's not just taking years worth of education and perseverance, but you have to have a team, and you have to build a team and be very, very proactive of finding your allies within it that is there for you. For myself, you're absolutely correct. Everyone wants to make money. From a public relations perspective, my goal is the opposite. It's about you. It's what is in your favor, what is in your best interest. And then hope, someone can pay, the retainer fee, because, there's a lot of legal aspects that go into PR as well, and what we have to learn. But with that being said, I agree. I believe a lot is getting better. I just would like there to be a lot more education for those who really care. This is just my perspective, David, that before someone comes up with, creating programs or $2,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 things to help educate musicians, I don't know. I'd see it differently than to just make it about money. And some of the horror things of people that have come to me to find out my perspective or where to go, or if I know of an attorney to have them reach out to, is, there's information out there you can get for free. You don't need to, or I don't believe that someone needs to drop $2,000 to $6,000 to try to get this lavish career, to start it, if they don't have to, if they can be a lot more empowered by just learning as much as they can learn on their own. And I hope
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's funny because if you just do the math, like, a lot of people are not even doing the numbers. Someone will say something like, "Oh my God, we're huge. We have 1 million streams, on Spotify or whatever. That's about $3,000. Okay, that's what you're making. That is after a 30% DSP cut, digital service provider cut, and that's on one platform. Okay, for 1 million streams. Now, recently, I've been thinking about things like this, the streams versus the downloads. I very much enjoyed following anything that Steve Jobs would write about, reading his bios and all these things. What I found interesting about Steve Jobs was that it seemed to me that his interest wasn't necessarily in just making tons of money. As you were mentioning before, it's not always about the money. He felt to me like someone who was very into Buddhism, very into minimalism, and he just didn't like the idea of vinyl and CDs cluttering a wall. So he wanted to make it easy, simple, smart, quick, buy it, done. And that's a very different thing than I want to make as much money as possible. You know, I want to just release some technology to make money. He was very interested in the human interaction between technology and people. That is why Apple's who they are. It's not that they make great products. They make products like everybody else makes products. They understand the relationship between people and technology. And right now, the relationship that artists have to technology is a blessing and a curse. I was thinking about this and I was like, man, I would love to see something where you take, well, first of all, if you do the number, right, if you have 1 million streams, that's about $3,000 or so, depending on what network, you know, what platform you're on, $3 to $5 grand. If you have 1 million sales, it's not $3,000. 1 million downloads, right? That is over $90,000. A huge difference between $3,000 and $90,000 in terms of 1 million of whatever you want to call a stream or a download. I'm curious, and you know, however controversial that might be, is if you took all of the top performing stars, I mean the Drakes of the world and the Cardi B's of the world and all the huge stars, and you got them together with an economist, okay, I would like to see projections for the music industry to see if streaming should still exist for music, because I think that is overall going to be a surprising answer. I think personally, I mean, I'm not an economist, but I have a feeling it's better to not have streaming for music, or it's better to pay a lot more per month per music. If you want to treat the artists right, if you want the artists to get paid right, if you want everyone to be happy, you can't be charging $9.99 a month. Everything's $9.99. I don't know how we came up with the idea that our lives are worth $9.99. It's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get this service, $9.99 a month. Oh yeah, it's $9.99 a month. It seems to be a formula. Everybody started with this $9.99 a month, and then eventually it becomes $11.99 a month, and then it becomes $15.99 a month. Well, that's because these companies are spending hand over fist, and you know they want subscribers, but it's not in their interest for you to stream. It's really not. And it's not in the artist's interest to stream, because you know, you're not making anything from streams, period. That's the bottom line. And the disparity between $3,000 and $90,000 is why you'll have tech companies that are valued at such high valuations, because they are reaping that benefit in the sense that the per stream payout is that low. Now, are they justified in that amount? I have no idea. There are boards that set these rates. It's a political thing. They all work out what they think is fair. But I would be so curious to see some experiment done with the biggest names in the business and some kind of economist or, you know, a Malcolm Gladwell type innovative thinker to see, would the music industry be better off if there was no streaming like this? Because I don't think it's sustainable unless you raise the monthly costs of the subscription services.
I really appreciate you sharing that, and it makes a lot of sense. It goes back to a quote that I read most recently by John Maxwell, And where you reminded me, David, is leaders become great not because of their power, but because of their ability to empower others. As someone such as myself, who is so accustomed, which I have no problem, to pay the licensing fees with having a satellite radio station, I am accustomed to be paying a really good amount of money to operate a satellite radio station with music, my BMI ASCAP sound exchange. I have no problem with it. What astounds me is these low amounts and the ease of access for music and music artists and highly educated and sophisticated, people and talent such as yourself, David, where it is absolutely easy. Now, keep in mind, I was able to go to your SoundCloud, but they were snippets, of what I was able to have the opportunity, or where I was able to have the opportunity to listen to your compositions. Overall, I believe people should pay more money to have access to you and your brilliant works. I think everything is just too low. And once again, I've been doing this for quite a long while now. I don't mind paying the exorbitant fees because I would not have a satellite radio music station without music artists, the writers, the producers, the composers, everybody, which helps make me and gifts to me the ability to have the type of radio station I have, no matter what genre of music you're playing. If I just want to have talk and someone wants to be cheap, someone doesn't want to pay the licensing fees, fine, just have talk radio. There's nothing about, with that. Hire someone like you, David, get the intro and outro music, whatever it may be, done. But if you want to have a music station, and I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of piracy out there, and I am a huge advocate. I've got some really good friends over at BMI, ASCAP, and Sound Exchange. And a recent conversation with someone from Sound Exchange where they are having a huge problem is the piracy, is the fact of, I don't know if you know this, but it's a conversation I had with the developers at Clubhouse and several other platforms. I said, can you please find a way where you can do the reporting, get the API from what Sound Exchange told me, so that I can, go on Clubhouse and we can do a live music drop or some type of intro, for you, David. But legally you cannot do it. So the people that are playing music online are actually, breaking the law from what BMI and Sound Exchange told me, is because it has to be reported. They want to know, they need to know. They're not, as you know, everything about these agencies, nonprofit, and from what we all know, they're there to protect you and make sure that you guys get paid. The blatant ignorancy of how people are just not educating. This is where it's a pet peeve for me, or a little bit, because I'm following the law. I'm paying my fees. I'm doing my reporting monthly, quarterly, and yearly. Every year, monthly, quarterly, and yearly, in the best interest for you, David, and everyone else. And how how people just ignorantly are disrespectful and taking content that they don't own, trying to have a radio station on Clubhouse, trying to have a radio station on what other social media platforms, and they're not paying the money that needs to go to you. That, and I'm going to tell you this, that shit has got to stop, because it's unfair for people like yourself that put all the time and effort in your heart and your spirit and your soul into this. And for professionals like myself that respect professionals like you, and we pay our fees, and there's this careless behavior out there, and without consideration of the accountability for it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times you're getting technology companies that are following certain protocols when it comes to releasing whatever they're doing, right? Like, for example, you'll have companies that start with one really, really, really simple thing. and then they will test that out. You know, the beta will come out, and then they'll test that out a little bit, and then say, oh, okay, well, now we're going to add this. Oh, okay, now we're going to add that. And they get these crazy evaluations from the beginning, right? They're like, oh, social media app, you know, we think it's worth $1 billion. Yeah, let's just say $1 billion, whatever. Everybody's saying a billion, so let's just say $1 billion. Let's give it a fancy, stupid name called a unicorn company, and let's make everything really cute and funny and memey. And it doesn't really matter if it makes money. Let's just evaluate it at $1 billion. That's what it starts to feel like over time when you see all of these apps and things come out that aren't necessarily making things better, but more complicated, right? Because the idea a lot of the times where it feels like is you come up with this idea for an app, and the idea is for you to sell the app and become a billionaire. That's not good. It's not good to just blanketly say, oh, here's a new app and it's worth $1 billion. These evaluations are absurd. And a lot of the reasons they're absurd is like what you're saying. They're not real. They're skirting around ways to pay for things, or they're not incorporating those things in a legal capacity. I've read the user agreement for Clubhouse, and I read the user agreements for everything. I mean, it's funny. I used to be a tech, and I would help people out with a lot of different things. When I was first starting out in New York, I had a consulting company where I would go to rock stars, and I would go to all sorts of different, executives or artists or anyone who needed help with tech, all Apple stuff. I was Apple certified tech. And, with a lot of these things, you really have to realize what you're signing up for. If you read the service agreements, they're telling you what your rights are. People don't read it. In fact, this is a whole other discussion, but part of what I think would solve a lot of problems regarding art and the internet and commerce and all these things related to art and entertainment is an idea that Jaron Lanier really started. Jaron Lanier is he was one of the pioneers of virtual reality. I've been following him since the 90s. He's a genius. He is all about getting off social media. This is the guy who founded virtual reality, telling you to get the hell off social media. It's like, there's a reason for that. The reason for that is because the whole way that it's structured is structured around stimulation, around someone clicking on something, somebody feeling stimulated enough to click, right? An ad, click this, click this, click this, clickbait this and this and this. And what they're finding is that the data seems to be showing that negative subject matter makes a lot more money than anything else. It's if it bleeds, it leads. The classic journalism pitch. If it bleeds, it leads. If it bleeds, if it's war, violence, people getting shot. I mean, every local news station, all they do is report death all day long. Here's all the things you should be scared of. Here's all the things you should be worried of. Creates a crazy atmosphere. When it comes to the tech and art, I think the internet should be paid. Now, before that's a big thing to say, but we have, a bookstore, a Barnes and Noble or a bookstore, Amazon, whatever bookstore, and you have a library, right? The library is essential. Okay. Not everyone can just pay for the internet. Not everyone can just pay and buy a book. Some things have to be free. And that's where the government can help with things like the internet. Everyone should have access to the internet for free. But there has to be a better system set up where I believe you should pay for Facebook. I believe you should pay for Instagram. I believe you should pay for everything. And I don't mean a subscription service. I mean pay to play. You can have a lot of different tiers. You can have a lot of different ways of doing this so that we eliminate ads altogether. These are moves that I would love to see as experiments, because what we're seeing is not only are the ads generating, not only is negativity generating the click through, but that once you start down a spiral, if you click on one article that is about, I don't know, rabid dogs or something, you're going to keep seeing that. They're going to start feeding you this stuff about rabid dogs. And so now your world is all about rabid dogs. If you click on how to make it in the music business, all the feeds are going to start coming in that are about how to make it in the music business. Your world is shaped, and your reality is entirely shaped by your experiences and where you put your consciousness. So someone who watches this news all day is going to get this. Someone who watches this news is going to get this. And they're both getting that information because there's advertisers that are supporting those news networks. And there has to be a point at some time where we realize that the ads and the negativity and all the stuff that people are trying to make money with is just destroying everything. With the internet, with traditional television, you have advertising and, commercial breaks and all that kind of stuff. And with the internet, you have the ads all on the outside and in the perimeter and the tracking and all those things. I would really love to see some form of paid internet and to see what that would clear up, because then I'm not seeing any ads and I'm not getting targeted by anyone. I'm just able to find what I want to find. Those are things that I think are very interesting. And the other thing I don't really ever understand is, even with something like Clubhouse or Instagram, here are these billion-dollar evaluations for things, or however much it's supposed to be worth. I can't even sort my contacts. Basic 101. Let me sort the people that I'm meeting. So, if I have 10,000 people following me on Clubhouse, what is that? How do I work with 10,000 people? I can't sort them by name. I can't sort them by industry. I mean, what do I do with that? It's like somebody saying, here's a 10,000 person Rolodex, go have fun. I mean, these are really basic things. I would love to be able to rank all the people that I want to follow in order of importance. I can't do that. So I can't keep up with anything because it's just a big cluster of stuff. Do you know what I mean? I would love to be able to say, okay, here are my top 20 people that I want to follow. I always want information about them first before anyone else. How do you do that? That to me is valuable. Not, oh, I just put a picture of, me in a bathing suit, which is what I see a lot of. A lot of musicians will hit me up and say, hey, can you do orchestrations for me? And I want to work with you and all this stuff. I go to their site and there's no music. There's just bikini pictures. And I'm like, man, do you want to be a model or a musician? You can be both, but you got to have some music up there. If you're going to say you're a musician, you can't just have bikini pics. And in fact, even recently, I saw this with Hugh Hefner's wife. Hugh Hefner's wife had taken down everything fake about her, I think is what she said. Mm-hmm. She said everything that's fake about her, she's going to remove. And she lost a lot of followers. And that's the truth, man. A lot of followers are people following people because they're sexy. And this is not a good way to build business or anything like that in the arts. That's just it's not a way to work. And I think if the internet is a paid thing, I think that's important. The other aspect, and this is also again Jaron Lanier's idea, and this incorporates all of this regarding art and economy and artistry, is that this idea that you are born with data. When you're born, you have a gender assigned to you. You have eye color. You have, race written down. You have, your weight. All of these things are data points, right? These are all things that are put on your birth certificate. These are things that later social media wants to know. They want to know about this stuff. That's the idea, is to sell ads, is to know who you are so that they can sell ads. So Jaron Lanier had this really interesting idea, since AI and ads are driving all these like curatorial decisions. The AI and the ads a lot of times are driving what we're seeing. The solution might be about people keeping their data, what he calls, I think he calls it data dignity, that you have the moral rights to the data that that exists about you forever. And that when social media says it's a free site, it's not actually free, because you're giving up your data in exchange for a service. And it would be very interesting to think about it as your data is valuable. When you're born with an asset. You know, you get slapped on the ass and you're born with an asset. You basically have information that you're born with, which is your personal information. And then companies spend the rest of their lives trying to get that personal information with you. That means that every individual has a worth in terms of data, not, you know, obviously a human worth, but in terms of data. And, you know, analogous to this idea is like, you know, the fact that we're giving away all of our data to all these companies. It's almost offensive. Like, you should treat your data as a personal right. You have the right to your own data. And that data maybe could then be licensed to Facebook, you know, but you own it. You could take it back. I don't know if this is even possible, but I think that that is something that's very interesting, because in that sense, data is your own personal value. It's almost like a property right, you know, and technically you should be paid royalties for your data, or there should be some even exchange. Right now, you're giving up all your data in exchange for a free service, which is why the company that's giving away the free service is valuated so high, because that's not a fair trade. I don't think that's a fair trade, to have your data in exchange for just a free service. I'd rather pay for Facebook every month, you know, just like anything else. Or I'd rather do a sliding tier system where you pay to play. And maybe I budget, you know, let's say I have $20 a month for the internet, right? And I budget that, and it just keeps track of how many hours I'm using the internet before. And it'll say, hey, you know, your data rate's getting low, just like this phone service. You know, I would love to see that, because I think you'll see a more productive society. I think you'll see less waste of time. I think you'll see less hate. I think you'll see less comments. No one's going to get on a paid service in order to vent. They're venting because it's free. You know, when you see these people go off in the comments section and they're freaking out, especially in politics, where people just keep talking. They just keep talking and talking and talking. They don't even do the homework. They're just like, no, you're an idiot, and da 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 da, and they move on. No, you're an idiot. If you had to pay for access, you won't be doing that, because you're paying to vent. You know, and right now everybody's treating the internet like a free therapist, and free therapists probably aren't really worth it, in my opinion.
I appreciate you. Seriously, I truly appreciate you. All of this is valuable. You hit the box of nails through the board with one hammer swing on so many things. And it makes sense. It just makes sense.
They just have to do the numbers. You know, these are all postulated. These are all theories. You know, these are things that I find interesting. You know, and it seems like they should work. You know, if you use the internet at 2 a.m, it should be cheaper than using it at 2 p.m. You know, if you use like, I get up at 4 a.m. every day. And when I'm up at 4, man, the internet is fast. I mean, I'm in LA, you know, and it's the internet can be hit or miss here, only because there's so many people, depending when you're on. When I'm on at 4 a.m, no one's on. It's awesome. It is wicked fast. And that is really cool. I get more done. The download and upload speeds are way faster. You know, no one's bothering me at 4 a.m. I'm doing my thing. But in general, I think it should be cheaper for me to use the internet at 4 a.m. because I'm not clogging up the bandwidth. You know, these things can be done, I think. I don't know. I'm not a computer programmer, but I think that these are interesting ways to make the internet work better. Because I don't think decentralization is the model. I think that's going to lead to a lot of chaos, you know, in Web3, and that's a whole other discussion. But yeah, Yeah, I think that there are ways to do this to make it more, I guess, fair, but also to make it make sense and solve multiple problems at the same time. That's something worth discussing.
Once again, very, very good point. On it all, seriously. And we'll see what happens, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on out there in terms of entertainment, in terms of media. There's a lot changing, and there are models of business that are just being blown up and reinvented every single day. But the education is key. If you read those user agreements, they're interesting. I mean, I remember reading them back in the 90s, even if you opened Word or some regular, and it says, do you want to install, and you have to read that user agreement. It tells you which countries you can do business with. Nobody has ever read it.
No, people don't read.
No, if you read it, it'll say you can't use this software in this country, you can't create products that are distributed in these countries because we have agreements that we don't work with these countries. I mean, there's a whole thing in there. And the same thing with Clubhouse, any of these, just read the user agreements and you'll see like you're educating yourself about what you're actually signing up for. And if anything is free, it's always going to be in quotes, no matter what it is. That's going to be in quotes for sure.
David, I want to thank you for being with us today on Live on Air with Stephen Cuoco on Power 98.5 Satellite Radio. Who would you like to give a shout out to?
You know what? I'm going to give a shout out to my man Bots, who is a wonderful producer who I've been working with a lot, and he has an event that's called the Cookout. And I'll tell you real quick. Do we have a quick second, or how much time we got?
Yeah, no. Well,
all right,
we're going to pause the music. Go ahead.
Okay, so one of the more exciting aspects I felt of the internet, and also with the pandemic, is meeting people online and all these kinds of things. So I hooked up with this cat named Davian Bots. He's a wonderful hip hop producer out of and generally just great music producer out of Houston, Texas. And he had told me, he says, "Oh, you have to come to the Cookout." And I was like, "What's the Cookout?" And he's like, "Oh, he's just come to it. Just come to it. You're going to love it. We're doing the next one we're doing is in New York City." I was like, okay. So I'm, getting to know these guys, and we're all hanging out online and talking and exchanging stuff. And I see him put out these flyers that say Cookout, and it's got a picture of him with the spatula and like a barbecue grill and all this. And he's like, "Yeah, we got like 80 people coming to this, so far." And I was like, 80 people? I'm like, what, is he catering it? Is it like, who is this guy? Is it record label? That's a lot of people to cook for. Is it on a rooftop? Maybe it's a record label party, on a rooftop somewhere. It's in Times Square. So, I had no idea what it was. But I like these guys a lot, and we were all, vibing. And so he's like, no, just come out and you'll see what it is. So I go out there, and what it is they're cooking up tracks, right? I'm thinking like he's going to be catering it. He's going to be flipping hamburgers for like all these people. I'm like, what is they're cooking up tracks. They're cooking up tracks. And it's incredible. And so I've gone to these events where they have a group of amazing producers and amazing artists that come in who all want to leave with songs, fully produced songs beginning to end. And every Cookout, they come out with, when the Cookout's over, it's a 3-day event, and there's usually about a dozen songs that are produced that are off the hook. And they're all created on the spot in that moment. And you're leaving with a finished song. It's the coolest thing because now we're all working alone. We're all working with samples. We're all working by ourselves in our little computers and all these rooms and all this kind of stuff. In fact, it was funny. One of the funniest things I remember in the beginning of the pandemic was I had posted a picture of it was like, here's a composer not during the pandemic, and it's just someone sitting at the computer alone, and then here's a composer during the pandemic, and it's a person sitting at the computer alone. Like we're always isolated when we create. And when I show up to these events, I bring in these tracks that I produce, and then I hook up with an artist, and they just crank in the moment. They're writing the lyrics, vibing off the room, vibing off the music, vibing off of what's happening live, as if it's like the olden days, like I would imagine that that's what it must have been like in the old Motown days or the old R&B and the old rock days. It's just you had people in a room, musicians in the room, the songs being written, and they're writing it on the spot, recording it, and bam, the magic happens. And what's so interesting about working with some of these artists is that that's the only way they like to work. I would send material to this one artist who I'm working with, name's Brenda Lynn, who's fabulous. And Brenda Lynn, I would send her music, and she wouldn't get back to me. I'm like, what's up with that? Like, she didn't like it. Maybe she didn't like it. And she's no, Dave, I got to create a vibe. I got to create in the moment. I got to be in the moment. And I was like, oh, this is great. And she gets in the moment and just boom, boom, boom. And yeah, we're finishing up our 7th track now. And you'll hear from her soon. She's a massive talent. But that energy and that kind of collaboration, because it's live, is incredible. And I'll tell you, the vibes they're just off the hook. So the next Cookout, you can find out about that at his site is called At the Cookout, ATTHE Cookout, COOKOUT.com, at thecookout.com. And I think the next one is going to be in LA, and that's going to be May 19th and 20th. And it's just a really, really cool, interesting thing that I've not seen anyone else do. These guys do this event in different cities throughout the year, and it brings together producers and artists. You create these great works, and you leave with a killer track. I love that. That to me is really where it's at, because you're dealing with people again, and at the end of the day, that's what it's about. It's all about emotional connection.
Thank you for sharing that, David. David Majzlin, Emmy-nominated composer, music producer, educator, writer, and I'm going to say one of the world's best dads. You've got to head on over to his Instagram. It's David Majzlin, DAVID-MAJZLIN. Where is the go-to for you right now? What is the hot spot? Is it Instagram? Is it Clubhouse? Are you planning on going on TikTok? Where can we all connect everything David Majzlin?
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, honestly, I am very, very slow with all this stuff because I just haven't had time. I haven't dealt with it. But Instagram has been fine. I really joined Instagram, I think 2 years ago, believe it or not. So, these things, Instagram's always great. Yeah, it's always cool. All the other stuff I have to catch up to eventually, but there's only so much time in the day.
Well, you're doing a great job, and I'm not being facetious with saying that. I'm truly being honest. And the Instagram, beautiful. I have it up right now. I'm going to look forward to more posts by you. And once again, David Majzlin, everyone, head on over to his, let's get this over here, his website, David Majzlin, MAJZLIN.com. Are you available for work right now? Are you working on any projects? What's happening?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always working on stuff. So, but things come in and out all over the place. So, there's this artist that I'm producing now. There's a TV show that I'm developing. Lots of stuff that's always going on. There's a short film actually now I just finished. It's really, really beautiful called Lalito 10. LALITO, Lalito 10, and that's making the festival circuit now. That actually just won an award at the Santa Barbara Film Festival, which is a nice little Oscar qualifying fest. So always stuff going on, man. Always.
Keep me posted. We will definitely have you on more often than not. You are more than welcome to be here. Power 98.5 Satellite Radio is your new home when you would like to be home with us and share all things David Majzlin and everything else that you're connected to. Is there anything else you want to share? Man. You're welcome, David. Any other drops, any shout outs, anything at all that you would like to do before we head on out?
Nope, just be kind and keep creating great music, great art.
Thank you. If you want to hold a line, David, you're more than welcome to. If you got to go, no worries. I want to thank everyone for tuning in today, live on air with Stephen Cuoco on Power 98.5 satellite radio. Connect all things Power 98.5 at power985.com. Download the iOS or Android app. Tune in on Alexa. We are streaming 24/7 on all other platforms, Streamer, Live Radio FM, MyTuner, and more. Wow. David Majzlin.
Friend us on your socials and let's connect.